Good morning, folks. Today we are going to talk about Technique 23 from the Fisher text, Question-Answer Relationship. This is a post-reading technique designed to help students answer comprehension questions. This technique is helpful if you're giving students a set of comprehension questions and you think they might struggle with where to start to find the answers. Sometimes students will look all through a text for an answer that just isn't there because it's a critical thinking question. It's not a question that they can just pick out. What QAR does is classify questions based on the degree of student reliance on the text. If you were assigned McKenna Chapter 7 for your jigsaw reading last week, these question classifications will be pretty familiar to you. There are right there questions that you can pick straight out of the text from a single sentence. This is what McKenna called Christopher Columbus questions, because you just search around until you land on the answer. Think and search questions require students to synthesize information from several different sentences or passages in the text. These question types are referred to respectively as text explicit or text implicit, because they both rely solely on the text, but they require different levels of engagement from the student. The next type of question is author and me. This type of question uses the language of the text, but it requires students to apply some of their own background knowledge to information that's drawn from the text. The final type of question is on your own, where students use the text as a jumping off point, but they must apply critical thinking and answer the question from their own background knowledge. These question types rely as much or more on students' own background knowledge as on information from the text, and they are script and text implicit, or simply script implicit. The QAR reading emphasizes that these levels should not be confused with Bloom's taxonomy of questions, because they vary based on reliance on students' background knowledge rather than by cognitive demand. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate this technique using the target text from my text set. The target text is a scientific journal article on the synthesis of a natural pesticide, prosaenol. We have studied the structure of a journal article already, and we've talked about what's found in each section. Students have already read the 3 supporting texts that provide background information about the controversy over pesticides, about chemical nomenclature, and they've watched a video review of the article that explains the importance of the article in layman's language. Based on these supporting texts, students have generated questions about the target text. I already used some of these questions in a pre-reading activity where I read the abstract article aloud while modeling intentional reading. Today, we're going to take those student questions plus some teacher-generated questions and use QAR to categorize them so that students have a better idea of how to produce an answer to them. So here are 4 example questions with their classifications. The first question, what commercially available molecule does the synthesis start with, is a question that can be answered directly from the text. There's a sentence in there that says that this synthesis began with the commercially available molecule pelargone. And so that's a right there question. The next question is, what did these authors do that let them make this molecule and others couldn't? There are 2 passages that talk about the strategies that the authors used, and the student has to look for them, find them, and then synthesize them together in order to figure out the answer. So that's a think and search question. The third question is, is this natural pesticide really any better than synthetic pesticides? There is some information on this in the text, but the student must also apply some of the background knowledge that they've gained from the 3 supporting texts, as well as any other knowledge that they have. So this is an author and you question. Finally, 16 steps seems like a lot. How many steps does it take to make a normal molecule? This question is based on the text in that it refers to the number of steps that is required to make prosaenol, but the answer is not found anywhere in the text. This is something that students must either know from background knowledge or find out from a different text. So this is an on your own question. All right, let's do some guided practice. Feel free to pause the presentation if you want to go ahead and read the abstract and then try to classify this first question. The natural insecticide prosaenol is isolated from what shrub? Okay, so this is a right there question. You can see from this first sentence, prosaenol is isolated from the tropical shrub Persea indica. The answer is right there in the text. It's a Christopher Columbus question, so it is text explicit. The next question is, this paper talks about prosaenol as an antefedant, but doesn't define the word. What does antefedant mean? This is an author and you question. It uses information and language from the text, but it relies on the reader or the student to have or acquire background knowledge. So this is an author and you question. It's script and text implicit. Let's try the next one. Would you rather be the first person to synthesize a natural insecticide like prosaenol, or the first person to produce a new genetically engineered plant? This, not surprisingly, is an on your own question. There's no way that a student could find the answer to this question in the text because it relies on them to critically consider the 2 alternatives and apply their own thoughts to it. Okay, last question. How does prosaenol affect its insecticidal properties? This is a think and search question. There are 2 different passages in the text where the reasons behind the insecticidal properties are discussed. The student has to combine those and synthesize them into an answer, but everything is in the text. So it is text implicit. That's the end of this presentation. Here's a summary of the different types of questions in the question-answer relationship classification. I hope this was helpful. Thanks and have a great day.